So I usually cover domestic issues, but at the moment you can't avoid the huge international events. But first, a Jew, a Muslim and a Christian walk into a bar. They sit down together, have a drink and a laugh. That's how it should be, and how the majority of people all over the world would prefer it. A Jew, a Muslim, a Christian walk into a bar. Their leaders tell them not to trust each other. They don't speak. A Jew, a Muslim, a Christian arrive outside a bar. Their leaders tell them to hate each other. They fight. Unfortunately, this is how the world works. Let's start with the ongoing situation in Gaza. I haven't heard it put this way, but if some British thugs, let's call them right-wing bigoted football supporters, went over to France and raped and murdered people, would we find it acceptable if France bombed and flattened Rickmansworth? That's roughly how many people have died in Gaza. Or, scaling it up as a percentage, taking into account the relative sizes of the countries, we'd be looking at Birmingham, Glasgow, Liverpool, Bristol, Manchester, Sheffield, Leeds, Edinburgh, Leicester, Coventry and Bradford combined. October the 7th was disgusting by anyone's standards, but the reaction from Israel, supported by our leaders, come on. Looking back though, this was set in place by the actions of the UK government via the Balfour Declaration in 1917 that established the Jewish state against the wishes of the incumbent population. The other big international situation is obviously what's going on in Iraq, Syria, Yemen, and ultimately Iran. The UK and US leaders have both said it's nothing to do with the situation in Gaza, but the Houthis, Hezbollah, and the other groups have made the connection, so it kind of is. They should have realised that people dying in Gaza is one thing, but interfering with trade is much more important to our leaders. Looking back again, the hatred against the West was further fuelled by the invasion of Iraq, so now we've got that whole area against us even more. And finally, the war in Ukraine, which despite the lack of coverage is still going on. Looking back again, we see the failure to respond to the Russian invasion of Crimea in 2014 was what allowed Putin the freedom to attack Ukraine. If we'd have put in sanctions then, he might have thought twice or even not been able to. But our leaders were too busy cozying up to Russia, taking their donations and letting them buy up large parts of London, not to mention giving them knighthoods and letting them have positions of power here. Fuck me, the company the Prime Minister's wife has interests in still trades with Russia. We've had bad leaders for too long who've made decisions for their own personal gain. Remember that when they ask you to fight to protect their country, their interests, and ultimately their wealth. If, like me, you despair at the people we call leaders, why not subscribe to this channel, share it, and choose notifications.